It's me, Brendyn Jones, with our producer Nithin, Reddy. Ready to really talk about everything that happened this weekend. There was so much stuff that took place in the world of Illinois sports. But let's get started with probably the most important thing, which was the MLB. Unfortunately, if you are a baseball fan in Illinois, probably I'd say 95% of people's team have been eliminated this weekend in the first round. Cardinals lost to the Padres, series 2-1. Sox lost to the Athletics in that series 2-1, and then Cubs got swept by the Marlins after losing on what day was that? Saturday?
That was
Or was it Friday? I think it was Friday. But yeah, I think these are three different teams that are at varying positions of like how you feel about them losing in the first round. Most notably, if you're a Sox fan, I think obviously it's a little disappointing, but you're not that sad. I think you're pretty optimistic about the future. In terms of the Cubs, I think it's the exact opposite. Yeah. You were kind of hoping their pitching would be able to take them on a run. Their offense wasn't having it, obviously, because I think they have one run between the two games. Yeah, that's just not going to cut it in the playoffs. Nithin, how'd you feel about that one?
Oh, man, as a Cubs fan, that was horrible watching. I was so frustrated throughout both games. I mean, the first game, Kyle Hendricks didn't really pitch that well, but he got through 6 without giving up a run, had a lead. He should have been pulled at that point with a high pitch count. He comes back in. They give up 5 runs. They lose the game 5-1. And then the next day, similar thing with Yu Darvish. He's pitching great, gives up 1 run, and then that's basically it. The game's over from that point because the Cubs can't score. The Cubs' offense the entire season was frustrating, and because it was only a 60-game season with the NBA going on and also the NFL starting, people didn't really pay that much attention to baseball, especially towards the second half of the season, which is when the Cubs were horrible. I mean, 13-3 start and then just fell off the wagon completely. Yeah,
it was definitely tough to watch as a Cubs fan. I didn't have a lot of expectations for them. I think they really benefited from that short season. The rest of the NL Central wasn't as good. I mean, we saw the Brewers kind of take that fall off from what they were last season. Obviously, it's hard with that 60-game season and everything that's happened this year in terms of shifting schedules and different protocols and all this stuff. But I think it really, for the Cubs, comes down to the fact that they just cannot put up offense. It's sad to say because this is a core that we've been used to for the last 5-6 years, and it seems like it's coming to an end, whether that be Chris Bryant leaving, whether that be them trying to shake up the roster and start maybe a rebuild. It's going to be tough to see some of those guys go who are on the 2016 team. But yeah, it's just tough. I think, you bring in a new coach this year and you think maybe that'll be able to change some stuff up. And then we just face similar problems in terms of, you're just not able to score. And I mean, yeah, baseball doesn't have a lot of, you don't need to be a great offensive team to succeed. But if you have no offense, you're not going to succeed at all. And I think that's just really what it came down to with the Cubs this year.
Yeah, I mean, the bats were terrible this season. Their OPS plus was 90, which means you're 10% worse than league average, which is unacceptable for the bats that you see in this lineup with KB, Riz, Javi, Wilson Contreras. Ian Happ was the best hitter all year for a reason. I mean, no one else was stepping up. Jason Hayward was even better than those guys. It was a frustrating season, and I hate that this core group is probably going to be broken up. But the good thing is that they've given us far more than any Cubs fan could have asked. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of the last 4 seasons, it's super frustrating. I mean, 17, World Series hangover. 18, really the last time that this team had any sort of success. 19, obviously we don't make the playoffs. And then 20, first round exit, wild card, where this team looked terrible. It hasn't been a great 4 years following the World Series, but 2016 is probably the most important championship for any franchise in North American history.
You think so?
So I don't know how you could really complain.
Yeah, and then it is tough to see that as a Cubs fan because, I mean, I remember staying up and watching that game that went into, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. after the rain delay. That was in Cleveland. how good it was to go to that parade and everything in 2016, just being from Chicago and doing all that stuff. And it is tough to see it go, but all kind of good teams have their end. That's just what it is about sports. But on the South side, I mean, they have a lot to look forward to. You know, you have Tim Anderson, you have Jose Abreu, Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada. They have a great young core that looks like we'll be able to be competitive as early as next year, obviously, depending on what the schedule is going to look like. But if this core continues to progress like we saw them play this year, I think it could be very exciting for the Chicago White Sox. And so as one Chicago team kind of, you know, descends from its higher status, one goes back up, and that might be frustrating for some Cubs fans in the city, but hey, at least there's a good Chicago baseball team. You know what I mean? Because there were times when we were younger where they were both bad at the same time, and that was kind of
bad. In that 2010 to 2014.
Yeah.
Neither team was great. It was post White Sox World Series and even post Cubs making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually pretty happy for White Sox fans. I don't think there's the same rivalry with White Sox Cubs as there might be with like Mets Yankees or even Cubs Cardinals, because there is sort of a reverence and this thing in Chicago where you just want to root for any Chicago team.
Mm-hmm.
So even though the White Sox are obviously counterparts to the Cubs, I'm excited to see what they're going to do. I mean, Giolito was phenomenal in that first game. These bats are really exciting, like Eloy Jimenez. You mentioned it, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu had a breakout year for the first time in a really long time. I'm glad that Chicago baseball is not completely done at this point, which it feels like for the foreseeable future might be what the Cubs are like.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously Cardinals lose that series to the Padres, 2-1. How do you feel about this Cardinals team going in the future? Obviously, they've had some sort of staggered success in the last few years, but in terms of the future, obviously, maybe if they blow up if the Cubs core gets blown up, there might be an extra spot at the top. 2 positions in the NL Central. What do you feel about this Cardinals team?
Yeah, so they had similar struggles to the Cubs where their bats weren't great in the regular season, but they showed up for the most part, and especially those first 2 games where they scored 16 runs.
Mm-hmm.
And then it once again fell apart by getting shut out and falling in that series. I think if you're a Cardinals fan, you're probably pretty happy with what you got. I mean, Jack Flaherty's a great pitcher. You got some good guys there. Paul Goldschmidt. I wouldn't be too disappointed if I was a Cardinals fan.
Definitely. I think it'll be very exciting to see how the NL Central shakes up. Obviously, probably we could expect to see some sort of movement from the Cubs organization as early as after the World Series, whether that be trading some pieces away, whether that be changing up the front office. I don't know if they're ready to get a new coach yet. Obviously, that 1 year trial run, I don't know how that really went in terms of changing the success. But yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to watch the Cubs as we continue to go through, which is obviously me and Nithin's team. We're kind of biased, but
yeah.
But yeah, who's your team right now that you think is going to, make it to the World Series and win?
I don't want to. The 2 teams I think are going to make it are probably the 2 teams that are the easiest picks: Yankees, Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of want to see the A's make it because Moneyball's my favorite movie. So big Billy Bean fan.
Moneyball's your favorite movie?
Yeah. And I just love the whole idea of that underdog mentality that the A's have and what they've been able to do with creating success this last 20-year period.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with you. I would like to see the Yankees make it. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Aaron Judge, especially when he came in as a rookie and just lit up everybody's pitching. But yeah, Dodgers are obviously up there. How do you feel about Tampa Bay?
Pitching's good. I mean, I'd feel good if you're the Rays because they won 8 out of 10 in the regular season against the Yankees. But yeah, the Yankees just have so many great players that there is some nervousness with that.
But yeah, definitely.
I just don't want the Astros to make it out of the AL.
Yeah, well, they're up right now, bottom of the 8th, 8-5 on the Athletics. I know the Astros aren't baseball's favorite team by a long shot, and they probably won't be for the next 5-10 years. Because of everything that came out, obviously, in the last year. But yeah, the Yankees and Rays play today at 7:07. But yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see that break down throughout the rest of the playoffs, and obviously we'll keep you covered on that. But when we get back, trouble in Chicago, Soldier Field on Lakeshore Drive. What we think about what happened yesterday, the debacle that the Bears game was. Yeah, stick with us. We're Illini Drive, 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU. Crazy weekend of football. Dallas and Cleveland game was insane. As we speak right now, the Kansas City Chiefs are up 3-0 on the New England Patriots. Obviously, if you guys haven't been listening, one player from each team, New England and Kansas City, Cam Newton for New England, and then a practice squad player for the Chiefs tested positive for COVID-19. They had to delay that game, making sure everybody was testing negative. Everybody this morning tested negative, so the game was on. For tonight, obviously, we won't know what comes out in the future, especially as we look at teams like Tennessee who have just major COVID outbreaks. I think 18 players and personnel.
Was it that high? I know it was high. But
it was high. It was for a few days. It was like 3 or 4 each day. And I think this morning was the first time in like 6 days where nobody tested positive. The NFL is looking into them, making sure that they were following protocols, making sure everything was right. Obviously, I think it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think I heard some stuff like there was gaps in data and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know the next time the Tennessee Titans will be able to play, but that sucks for them. When we play them, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's AFC. It's AFC South, right?
Yeah, but it's not until November. Okay. So yeah. We're, by then, hopefully everything's fine. Hopefully we don't experience any COVID outbreak with the Bears. But yeah. I think they're in Arrowhead right now. Yeah, so New England went to Arrowhead to play. Obviously, without Cam Newton, they're starting quarterback, so that's going to be tough. Obviously, against any Chiefs team, but especially without your starting quarterback. But starting quarterbacks are weird in the NFL, and if anybody knows that, it's Chicago Bears fans. I think. After last weekend, where Nick Foles came in the third quarter, led them back against the high-scoring Atlanta Falcons team, you thought, hey, maybe Nick Foles isn't a great quarterback, but at least he'll put points on the board. That's something we weren't accustomed to with Mitch Trubisky. And in the first 55 minutes of yesterday's game against, to be fair, a really good Colts defense.
First 58 minutes.
Was it first 58 minutes?
Yeah.
In the first 58 minutes of that game, Nick Foles and the Bears offense amounted to one field goal, 3 points.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, like we talked about in baseball, if you're not scoring points, you're not going to win. Mm-hmm. It was very hard to watch that game. There were a lot of missed throws. There were a lot of miscommunications. The defense was really trying their best to keep them in there. And there were just so many. I think, how many times did Pat O'Donnell punt? In the first half, I think it was 6. And then probably up to 8 or 9. I can check that out. But
yeah, I don't have that number.
Yeah, I mean, it was very reminiscent of a Mitch Trubisky game in terms of just missing throws, missing opportunities, getting off the field really early, and having the defense kind of lead you back. Obviously, they score and get a 2-point conversion, but then they don't receive the onside kick. So it was tough. It was tough to watch Nick Foles do that after he put up, 24 points in however many minutes?
No, it was 20.
It was 20 points? Okay, so Pat O'Donnell kicked 7 times. But what is there to look forward to each Sunday when you turn on a Bears game? Because I'm finding, like, every week I'm finding less and less reason to watch a Bears game. And it's getting so frustrating.
Which is crazy because it's a 3-1 team.
This is the worst 3-1 team I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking it was the worst 3-0 team at the time.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot to enjoy at this point because the defense isn't where it was at in 2018. It's still, I'd say it's probably somewhere in like the 7 to 12 range.
Yeah.
Of best defenses. So it's an above average defense. But it's, I mean, this whole team, like the offense, it'll have these stretches like we saw with Nick Foles in the fourth quarter against the Falcons, like we saw with Mitch Trubisky in the fourth quarter against the Lions. But there isn't that consistency that we've been waiting for, and that really all Chicago Bears fans just want to see. I mean, we've only seen just quarterback highs and lows where Mitch Trubisky goes for 6 TDs, and then he opens up last year and he's unable to get a touchdown. I mean, there's this emotional like tug of war that's happening throughout every game. I don't think I sound completely down, but I think I still do have some faith because Nick Foles is a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
I mean, it might just be a one-off game where he struggled. He was playing against a very good defense that's been playing exceptionally well, granted against inferior opponents, but they've been playing great football, and maybe he just needs some time to get used to playing this offense and playing with the receivers.
I can understand that, and I can understand like needing time, and I think the difference between Atlanta and Indianapolis is obviously Atlanta has not a good defense, right? So Nick Foles is able to come in there, and as long as, I mean, Mitch Trubisky could have won that game if he just made the throws when they were there. That's the difference between what Mitch Trubisky did in the first 2.5 quarters and what Nick Foles did in the last quarter and a half. He made the throws when they were open, when they were there. He didn't do that. There were a lot of opportunities where he could have, extended drives, right? Got them to the first down in short routes and slants and things as such, and they were in the red zone and they just couldn't convert. And I mean, it's really, really tough to see because that's what I thought that Nick Foles could bring, even if, hey, like he's not going to be a superstar quarterback. He's not going to turn the Bears offense around and make them a top 10 offense in the league. Of course, nobody really had those expectations. But you expect Nick Foles to come in and make the throws. And yesterday he didn't, for whatever reason, whether that be, obviously this is his first full week as a starter. Even in training camp, they were 50-50 until right before the season started. Obviously with COVID, you lose a lot of training camp time. You lose time to understand that film. He didn't get signed until the summer. So yeah, I mean, like it's obviously it's weird and it's kind of frustrating. Do you think, obviously a short week, they're playing on Thursday, they're playing Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Do you think that this team can bounce back in a way? Because I'm not concerned about the Buccaneers defense. What I'm concerned about is if our offense can put up similar points than a Tom Brady-led offense with all those weapons he has. Do you think that the Bears stand a chance on Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, I do, but I wouldn't pick them right now, if I'm just being honest. And the thing is, I need to see more of what Foles did on that last drive, where obviously the defense for the Colts isn't playing the same type of defense on that last drive. They're just trying to run out the clock, keep everything in front of them. And that's why he's able to get some of those easy throws off. But the deep ball is what we need to see more of. That's Nick Foles' game. I mean, we saw it with Allen Robinson and that TD, where he threw it up high where only Allen Robinson could catch it. And we've seen that throughout even these first 2 games, that when he throws deep balls, he's generally pretty good at giving it to his player. I mean, he had that, I think that Darnell Mooney throw where he was completely beat inside and he threw it outside, and it was just probably a miscommunication. But I want to see Nick Foles stretch the field more, because if we're just doing checkdowns over and over, which is what he was doing through those first like 56 minutes before that last drive, nothing's going to happen. It's the same Bears offense. You just have a slower QB in, basically. And the second that we're able to stretch the D, because Mitch obviously wasn't able to do that, we're opening up this game, his game, to a different level, and we're also opening up this offense to play to Matt Nagy's strengths of getting tight ends down the middle and running back wheel routes and all these plays that cannot be done unless the defense isn't looking to stop the underneath stuff.
It's funny that you bring up Matt Nagy, right? We see in 2018 he comes in, first-year head coach from the Chiefs system. has a lot of coaching experience. A lot of guys think very highly of him. Comes in, wins Coach of the Year in that 2018 season. Bears go 2-4. We know that story, right? Last year, that team obviously underperformed, and this year, with a formidable quarterback, obviously has only had a week of starting experience. Is still getting to know this new wide receiver core of his. But as we look to the sideline, how much of the problem do you think is Matt Nagy? And do you think this is a team that can succeed under Matt Nagy with the weapons that he has?
So through the first 3 games, I wouldn't have really said it's really Matt Nagy's fault at all. I mean, I thought he called pretty good games. It's just the quarterback play wasn't consistent, which, obviously what we've been talking about. But this last game, it was bad. I mean, the offense kind of gave up on running the football. I know there wasn't much going on, but you just can't do that because once this team becomes one-dimensional, especially if that one dimension is the passing game, it's so easy to stop the Bears. I thought he could have done a much better job with that. But ultimately, it's on the players. Like, you have to go out there and execute. Nagy's, I think he's done overall a good job. I mean, there are definitely things I would change, but I don't think we're at a point where, okay, we have to start thinking about a coaching change. I think that's still a long ways away.
But that's my thing is, like, you brought up a great point with the run. It's like, it's so hard to win in the NFL, even though it's a passing league right now, if you don't establish the run. And they had what? They rushed for 1.45 yards per rush yesterday. And obviously you're missing Tariq Cohen, which is a significant part of your backfield. But when you have David Montgomery and you have Cordell Patterson has had a pretty good year rushing, especially in comparison to last year, you have to establish the run at some point. And it just never came. And that's kind of frustrating because it's what you saw a lot last year, just failure to establish the run, and then you're relying on these quarterbacks who aren't really anything special in terms of their arm talent, in terms of what they can do. And it is just frustrating, and I don't know where that line is with Matt Nagy. Obviously, he bought himself a lot of time coming in his first year and winning Coach of the Year. And obviously, NFL coaches, I think, especially on teams that are mediocre, they have a longer life than like other leagues, especially in like the NBA. But it is just frustrating to see, and it's something to look out for because it comes to the point is like Matt Nagy knows what offensive players he has. He knows his talent. This is his 3rd year. He knows the weapons he has, and the fact that it doesn't seem like he's calling the plays to the best of his weapons' abilities is kind of a red flag, and it should be addressed, I think.
The thing that I didn't like was that it was a lot of just straight drop back passes for Nick Foles. And that, I mean, it's so obvious what your team's going to do then because he's not a running threat like Mitch, or you can't really send these bootlegs or these plays to move him around the pocket because he wants to stay in the pocket. So you can do that by providing play action and sucking the defense in so you can open up plays downfield, and that didn't happen. And, I mean, it's been shown that play action still works even if your running game doesn't work. Yeah. So why not go to that? Why not give yourself a chance at trying to open up patches in that cold zone that was working tremendously well?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I agree with you. It's just it's tough that this was Nick Foles' first start against such a great defense. They were really stopping. The Colts defense right now is reminiscent of what that Bears defense was in 2018. Really stopping the run, really able to just, put pressure.
They're not getting turnovers at the same time.
Well, yeah. But I'm talking about, like, I was talking with me and JJ my roommate JJ were watching the game together, and just the fact that every time they tried to run, it just seemed like there was a brick wall running into. And that's what it really was back in 2018 with establishing the run. And then it made it made it harder to pass because when you can't run, obviously you have to pass, as we've seen with the Bears last week and then or this past weekend. And then that's where the turnovers came in. Obviously the Colts aren't what the Bears were in turnovers. But that run defense is tough. And that's just what the Bears ran into. And I'm looking at their schedule right now. Obviously Thursday Night Football, they're playing the Buccaneers. Then next Sunday, obviously. After Thursday, they play the Panthers. They have the Rams, then the Saints, then the Titans, and the Vikings, and the schedule really doesn't get easy, right? Mm-hmm. There's not a stretch where I'm like, okay, maybe they can put together 2 here, or maybe they can go on a little run. And I'm looking at their thing, and I don't know if they get another win until they play the Vikings on November 16th. And that's kind of weird because they have the Buccaneers, the Panthers, the Rams, the Saints, the Titans, and then the Vikings. How do you feel about this team? And right now, are you confident that this team can go 500?
Yeah. I still
think so.
I still think 500 is like the minimum, at least for this team. I mean, I know you look at the schedule and you don't think there's a lot of gimme wins, but they're winnable games. I mean, even the Buccaneers, like I'm not going to pick them. I'm guessing you're probably not going to pick them in that matchup, but that's a winnable game. The Panthers, that's a winnable game. I mean, with Teddy Bridgewater back there, granted the Panthers have been fairly good so far. I mean, for what we expected, there isn't a ton of talent on that team, if we're being honest. And with McCaffrey out, it doesn't seem like the Bears have to worry about the run game as much. And Teddy Bridgewater beating that defense doesn't seem very logical. The Rams and the Saints, those games worry me, though. Because even though the Rams weren't good against the Giants, they've been really good throughout the season. I mean, even the Bills game, it looked like they were completely done. They come back, take the lead in that game, and almost win it. Mm-hmm. I'm worried about that. And the Saints, even though Drew Brees hasn't been Drew Brees.
By then, Michael Thomas should be back.
And the rest of the team has just been really good. Like, the defense has been great. Kamara's been great. It's just, can Drew Brees be great?
Yeah.
So I do understand the concern, but I think even in these 6 games coming up, I think 2 to 3 wins is still realistic.
I just can't buy in. I can't buy in, and it's because I saw them in the first half against the Lions, right? And I saw them in the second half against the Giants, and in the first 3 quarters against the Falcons, right?
Are you giving up on Nick Foles? Because it sounds a bit like it.
Well, it's not that I'm giving up on Nick Foles. Obviously, I think he's still the starter for the rest of the year, as he should be. I think he's a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky. I think he puts the team in a better position to win. But obviously, Nick Foles wasn't my first option in free agency, right? Yeah. Cam Newton and Teddy.
He wasn't even a free agent. We had to trade a full pick for him.
He wasn't the quarterback I wanted to go get. Yeah. And then they commit a good amount of money to Nick Foles, right? And it is just kind of frustrating to see that because, you know, obviously I haven't given up on him in terms of this season, but I don't really want to see Nick Foles as my quarterback next year.
Okay.
But do you know when his contract's up?
I'm pretty sure it's $24 million over 3 years is at least the guaranteed money, which is really all that matters. I'm pulling
right.
But honestly, you'll probably have to see Nick Foles next year too. It's a 3-year, $24 million deal with 21 guaranteed at signing. So if you can cut him after 2 years and only lose about $4 million in dead cap, which isn't terrible, but they're not going to cut him next year because that's still a fairly sizable cap hit.
Yeah, which is tough because I don't want to see Nick Foles as my quarterback next year either. Okay. Which is like all love to Nick. I think he's a great quarterback, but it's tough because you look at this defense, which is obviously deteriorating. We talk about this every week. They're not what they used to be, and you're gonna have to at some point if you're gonna want to compete with this team. We kind of got lucky in 2018 with how good that defense was and how solid that offense actually was. If you're gonna compete with this team, you're gonna need a quarterback. That's just what it is. What it is. The quarterback play in this league is just way too good. And it's not looking like there's going to be a chance for us to get a good quarterback at a good point in that quarterback's career, and then also keep a formidable defense. And it's just kind of getting frustrating at this point.
Hey, Texans 0-4. Bill O'Brien just got fired. You never know.
Are you saying that?
No, of course
Deshaun
they're
Watson
not.
I mean, they just re-signed him. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the guy who I really loved in the draft, and I was really hoping the Bears would take him. But yeah, there's no chance.
There was a Bleacher Report story, I think, that came out earlier this week. And apparently in March of 2017, the Bears were telling Patrick Mahomes that he was the guy. And that hurts so much.
That does.
It hurts so much. Because you just look at Patrick Mahomes, and he's literally just the perfect modern quarterback. Obviously, he has just insane weapons around him. And I don't think Patrick Mahomes would have the same production under this system with the weapons around him that the Bears could provide.
But you could also argue they might invest more in the offense.
Right. I think they would have invested more in the offense. And I think I obviously would have I think Patrick Mahomes could do more with this offense than anybody else in the league.
I think probably Aaron Rodgers could do more just because.
Yeah, but then there's the longevity part of it.
Oh, yeah.
If
we're talking about
I think if we're talking about it in the moment, I think Aaron Rodgers could just do anything.
Yeah, if we're talking about guys that like I want for the rest of their career right now that would fit with the Bears, obviously Pat Mahomes is number one. I still think like guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, you'd still probably want for this season.
Does it make me a bad Bears fan that I was looking at Aaron Rodgers' contract because I was hoping it was up
He's
soon?
not coming. I mean, I'm sorry.
I know, but it was like, because I was thinking about quarterbacks that we could get that could make our team just.
I think we're more likely to get Jordan Love than we are.
Well, yeah, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers would come here, but I was just thinking, it's like, how could we get Aaron Rodgers, who'd obviously torched us his whole career?
Yeah,
it'd be lovely just to see him end and have a good, decent 2-year stint with the Bears.
Yeah.
Am I dreaming? I'm dreaming. I'll get out of my dreams.
That would be so bittersweet, I feel like, for me, because
Really?
I would have rooted my whole life against Aaron Rodgers, and then him coming to my team and being like, all right, that's my quarterback now.
I think it's the LeBron effect to me. It's like, as much as like I don't like watching Aaron Rodgers just tear up my team, he's a great quarterback, and I love watching him play. Like those 2 games a year where he watches the Bears, I hate Aaron Rodgers. Other 14 games of his, I'm like, go ahead. Like, he's a great quarterback. I love watching him play. And if he ever wanted to come in Chicago, there's a spot for you. I'll guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there definitely is, but there's no shot. I'm sorry, Brendyn.
We're going to get off of this sad wave of Bears football and what it has amounted to this year, even though they are 3-1. So there's a little bit to be happy about, right? They're still in contention, right? But when we come back, we're going to talk about the NBA Finals, which surprisingly yesterday heated up.
Okay, nice.
You saw that? Saw what I was doing there?
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, that'll be what we talk about when we come back on Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. Last night, I'm going to call him Chicago's very own, even though he does not claim Chicago.
Definitely not Chicago's.
We claim him. I claim him right now. Jimmy Butler became the 3rd player in NBA history, joining Jerry West and LeBron James, to have a 40-point triple-double in the finals. And he did it against LeBron James. He outscored LeBron. He out-rebounded LeBron. He out-assisted LeBron. Stuff that you know LeBron is going to do, or you've been accustomed for LeBron doing for the past 6-7 years every time he's in the finals. And they got the series to 2-1 off of, I think, what was the final score of that game?
It was 115-104.
115-104. And they did this without Goran Dragic. They did this without Bam Adebayo. And this is obviously, me and Nithin, the first time we've talked about this since the series began. But if you would have told me yesterday that, they were going to win that game, I had no faith. I had no faith. I thought the Lakers were going to come.
I thought it was done.
Thought it was going to be a sweep. And now you look at this team, they have an extra day. Obviously, Bam has been upgraded into questionable instead of doubtful.
So he's probably going to play.
He'll probably play, I think, some reserve minutes. Mm-hmm. But they made a lot of defensive switches yesterday that had them win the game. Obviously, they were playing a lot of man, which they hadn't been doing because zone worked so well against the Celtics. They were manning up. Obviously, LeBron torched that zone. Did a lot of man. They got Anthony Davis into foul trouble so early, and they limited him. I think he had 15 points. Jimmy Butler was playing a lot of man on LeBron James, caused him to have 7 turnovers, or 7 of his 8 turnovers were when Jimmy Butler was guarding him. They played really, really well defensively, and each time the Lakers kind of crept back into it, I don't think there was really any doubt in the Heat's mind that they could still win that game. How are you feeling about this series now?
I'd feel better as a Heat fan, but it's up to Bam, I think.
Yeah.
I think Bam has to be like 90-95% of himself for them to really have a shot. Initially, I picked Heat in 7, and the more I've thought about it today, even though I was really impressed with the Heat, I think Lakers in 7 is more likely just because LeBron's probably not losing a Game 7. Like, I could see the Heat getting it there.
Has he ever lost a Game 7?
Not recently, at least.
Yeah, definitely not in the last 6 years.
Because did that
Mavs go 7? The Mavs series?
No, that went 6.
And I don't think he's ever lost a Game 7.
Well, he hasn't, at least in this decade. Like in the last 10 years, he hasn't. maybe like early Cavs, he might have.
Well, I think in the finals, no. Maybe in the
even in the well, he's only played in one 7-game series.
Was that the
No. He's played in two. The Spurs one in 2013, and then
and they won that one.
Yeah, and then 2016.
And they won that.
So
one.
he's won both of them.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Butler was huge. Obviously, offensively, I mean, a 40-point triple double is insane. He had the second highest game score in NBA history, NBA Finals history. Sorry, and he really just said. He's literally said to LeBron's face, "You're in trouble," which is amazing.
That's bold.
That is, but that's also Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Butler.
Like Jimmy Butler,
right.
Jimmy Butler thinks he's the best player every time he steps on the court, which is exactly what this team needs. I feel better, but I mean, Jimmy Butler getting another 40-point triple double, or even getting something similar to that, seems very unlikely in the series. And
seems unlikely, you think?
Yeah, unless Bam comes back and is basically the same guy, Jimmy's going to have to do that in order for the Heat to win games.
I think that because of the weapons around Jimmy and because of how well that team shoots, I think Jimmy can do that type of damage anytime he wants to. I just think it's about if he wants to, and because he's not going to go put up 40 points if it's going to be detrimental to his team. They needed every bit of that performance yesterday to stay in this series, right? We've seen Duncan Robinson kind of regress. Obviously, I mean, shots get tougher in the finals, right? People play harder defense in the finals. I think Tyler Hero shot 6 for 20.
6 for 18.
6 for 18 yesterday. Not great.
But he was not very clutch.
Right, but he was clutch when it mattered, right? The thing about this team is that obviously they faced their best ball handler is probably out for the series, right?
Yeah.
Their best defensive player, at least the best defensive big man, undoubtedly, has been out for the last 2 games. Probably, if I had to guess, will probably at least be limited in Game 4 tomorrow. They've had to rely on Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk, who have not played a lot throughout the playoffs at all. My thing is, if this team can ever click all together at the same time, I think they can easily beat the Lakers in a game.
Okay.
Like, convincingly beat the Lakers in a game. Like, because this team obviously will always be there defensively, and I think that switch to man made so much of a difference because they got beat convincingly both.
I'm so shocked it took as long as it did. I mean, I think after game
they were
1,
just
you should have realized that, though.
I think they were in Game 2, they were just scared to go to man because they didn't have Bam.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's just a daunting task to be like, all right, Myers Leonard, go D up Anthony Davis man on man, right?
Yeah.
Even when you have help defense, right? And obviously the Heat were fortunate because Danny Green played a bad game. KCP played a bad game. So they definitely benefited from that, right? But I think that the keys to Game 4, right? If Bam plays, you still have to play man. And you have to try to draw Anthony Davis into foul trouble. Obviously, he'll be hesitant, but you kind of got to lure him into there because he's going to be more hesitant to commit fouls. He's going to be more hesitant to play defense because he doesn't want to get into foul trouble and he sees how that affects his team. Obviously, he'll be more aggressive than he was able to out there with 4 fouls, but he's not going to want to get into foul trouble because of how important he is to that team. They're going to have to draw that in. They did a really good job of drawing charges and offensive fouls on that team and turnovers. They're going to have to hunker down on that philosophy because the only way you're going to beat this Lakers team is by causing turnovers, and they have to shoot a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think rebounding's very important in this series because that zone, part of the reason why they had to stop the zone was that there were so many offensive rebounds the Lakers were getting. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some 2 big lineups for the Heat. I think that would be great for this team because granted, you don't have outside of Bam, you don't have great defensive bigs, but Myers Leonard still works. Myers Leonard is still a very good player that you can plug in to be your JaVale McGee or your Dwight Howard. Kelly Olynyk, he has those ups and downs. When he's up, he's a stretch 5 that's huge for that offense. When he's down, he's missing layups and he's a defensive liability. So he's another key player for this team. I trust these wings though so much. Tyler Hero, he was bad, but he did what he needed to do when he had to do it. I mean, you saw that mean mug. He did it for a reason.
One of the least intimidating mean mugs I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was. But it was deserved. I mean, that layup on Rondo, he was phenomenal down the stretch. Duncan Robinson hasn't played great in the series, but I know he's a reliable shooter that you want out there. He hit a huge clutch three for them with, I think, like 2 minutes left in the game. That was big. Jimmy Butler, though, has to guard LeBron for the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way about it because we saw it in Chicago. He was the best player, probably from like 2014 to like 2018 to guard LeBron.
Yeah.
Even over Kawhi, I felt like Jimmy just he had some sort of edge when it was guarding LeBron. Granted, LeBron still went off in those games, but Jimmy slowed him down a ton. And I still think he has this mentality. I talk about this with my roommates. He's a dog. They have 100%. So many dogs on that team where it's just like you trust that guy no matter what. You trust Hero. You trust Robinson. You trust Jimmy. You trust Dragic. You trust Bam. You even trust Jay Crowder, which is surprising because Jay Crowder has been so inconsistent ever since that great year with the Celtics, I think in 2017. But he works well with this team, and he guarded AD pretty well in the last game. I think this is a series for sure. It was so huge of Miami to win Game 3. Now they got to come back and do the same thing. They got to come back. Tyler Hero's got to be better. Jimmy's got to do the same stuff. Bam's got to be phenomenal. And this team really has to win another must-win because 3-1, I don't think they can come back.
Yeah, I don't think they come back from 3-1 at all. It'll even be hard to win that series if it's 2-2. Like, this is obviously LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Yeah. And we're talking a lot of like best case scenarios for the Heat, right? But there's also on the other side the best case scenario for the Lakers, which I think we probably saw in Game 1 where Anthony Davis and LeBron go off and then all the rest of the people are just shooting the lights out, right? I think Game 1 is probably a best case scenario for the Lakers. And
I don't know if Game 1's realistic though because the Heat just shot terribly.
Yeah, the Heat shot really bad, but the Lakers I think everybody was just shooting their minds off. I think they shot I'm not going to put out fake numbers, but
I got the numbers here from Game 1.
I think they shot like 50% from the three, and they put up like 30.
Oh, they shot 40% from three.
Okay.
15 for 38, but they were very hot. Early. Yeah. I think it was like they were like 11 for 17. And
early in the game, it was bad. Right. What you said about Jimmy Butler is just so true. It's just the fact that he's a dog and he surrounded himself by dogs. And I mean, he'll be the first person to tell you that. Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody who is bold enough to tell LeBron James you're in trouble. Because every time we see somebody try, I mean, like we saw it with Klay Thompson when he said, like, I guess LeBron's in his feelings, and then LeBron came back down 3-1. We saw Russell Westbrook always talking, right? And then they beat them. You just see it. I mean, LeBron James is the type of person to finish conversations. But I think that the difference is that this is Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler doesn't care. And, like, Jimmy Butler's going to go out there and play his mind out, and it's going to be insane. And I think that this team defensively, like, is just when they're on and they play man, which I think they obviously will probably for the rest of the series. And if Bam is back and is productive, match up really, really well with this team. And it's what we've been talking about. Obviously, they have suffered from losing their best ball handler in Goran Dragic and their best playmaker. And obviously, they suffered in losing their best defensive big man in Bam Adebayo. But they didn't make excuses for Game 3, and they came out and they just played a phenomenal game, and they played a better game than the Lakers, and I think that's what they're going to need to do. Their back's been against the wall all playoffs. Their back's been against the wall pretty much all season. Jimmy Butler's back's been against the wall since he was a high school basketball player. Old,
so homeless.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like this is the nature of Jimmy Butler, and this is the nature of that Heat team. Mm-hmm. All these guys who are supposed to be role players. You look at Duncan Robinson, who was thinking about a career in sports media, like then goes.
I love that
that text that he sent.
Text, yeah. I've been. Do you know who Mark Titus is?
Yeah.
So I listened to his pod with Tate Frazier, the podcast one, college basketball, and I think it's one of the best pods out there for college basketball. But sorry,
no, you're good.
I think it's so interesting how like Duncan Robinson does seem like that kind of person that is realistic and understands like, hey, I was coming off the bench in Michigan and I'm a former D3 player. Like there aren't great odds that I'm going to be a successful NBA player, but he's so valuable because he's got great size and he hits threes at an insanely high rate. It's all of these guys. There's so many players that have overcome tough times, and it's not even like Jimmy Butler level tough. It's like it's the Duncan Robinson stuff.
Right.
You're a D3 guy and you don't expect to be in the NBA. It's Bam Adebayo who lived in a trailer throughout his life. It's even the irrational confidence that Tyler Hero has.
Right, because he decommitted from Wisconsin and went to Kentucky, and everybody in the state hated him his senior year of high school.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
these guys have these little chips on their shoulder. Dragic, people thought he was done 2 years ago. That really makes up this roster, and I still am picking the Lakers. I don't want it to confuse anyone to think that.
Same.
I don't think LeBron is going to lose this series, but I'm not there fully where I thought I was yesterday going into that game, where I thought the series was over, and then Jimmy Butler just said "F you" to me during that game, and goes out and has probably the second best finals performance ever.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and I think that I'm still picking the Lakers. That's probably the smart pick. That's probably what's going to end up happening. But I would not be surprised at all if they go out tomorrow, even the series, right? And then they get Bam back and he's fully healthy. And then it's an actual series. And then, Duncan Robinson, I think Jimmy Butler said it in a press conference. He said, one of these games, Duncan Robinson is going to win us a game. Yeah. He's going to go out and shoot 6 or 7 threes, and I'm going to be excited, and everybody's going to be happy. And that is what it is. And I love the confidence that they have, because at any given moment, any of these guys can go out and win the game. And that's what's so fascinating about it. And you don't feel that way about the Lakers. You think that about LeBron and AD. You don't feel like 5 guys can go out there and win you the game. And that just is what it is with the Heat.
How many guys do you trust on the Lakers? Because for me, it's probably 3. It's LeBron, AD, Rondo. And the other guys.
Do you even trust Rondo? I think Rondo's just really, really hot right now. And obviously it's playoff Rondo, and he's been shooting the best in his career. But I still don't I don't trust Rondo to go out there and win you a game. I think he's just going to play his role phenomenally.
Well, I think that's where my trust comes from. I just think he's going to be a great player for this team that's always going to make great decisions. I can't say that about KCP. I can't say that about Kyle Kuzma. Definitely can't say that about
Kyle Kuzma. He's had a tough one.
I can't even say that about guys like Alex Caruso.
No, at all.
Who you feel are solid players, but you don't know if they're going to always be there for you.
No, exactly. And that's what it is. I think you look at Duncan Robinson, who could probably steal you a game if he gets hot in the third quarter, right? Tyler Hero, who we've seen play phenomenal against good teams. Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler. Even the combination of Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala, who've been really, really good, they can go win you a game. It's tough. It's tough. And I think that LeBron knows that, and I think he's not underestimating this team, even though the world is right now. But I think the Heat are going to come to play tomorrow, and I think it'll be a very, very, very interesting game 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all we got for you today. Join us back here on Wednesday at the same time. Gabby and Josh will be here tomorrow and Thursday. Talk about much of the same things. Recap the games that happened, that are happening right now and happening later tonight. But yeah, for me and Nithin, this is Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU.